So this week and next week we will not be discussing Parshas Shavua, but rather Hilchos Tisha B'Av, specifically Tisha B'Av Shechal Liyos B'Shabbos, Tisha B'Av Nidche. So this year, both Shavuos and Amazon, Tisha B'Av naturally always go together, and they both are Chal B'Shabbos, and they are both Nidche, postponed till Sunday, Echad B'Shabbos. So this week will be more the Lumdis, the fundamentals, and next week more Halacha L'Maisa. So this week, in a way, is somewhat of an introduction to next year as well. The story of Tisha B'Av is told in Masechet Tanis Chof Tes Omed Aleph. But even before we learn the Mishnayos and Braisos and Gemoros, let's start off with the earliest source, which is in Novi Zechariah, Perek Ches. Tzoyim HaRevi'ah v'Tzoyim HaChamishi, Tzoyim HaShvi'ah v'Tzoyim HaAsiri, referring to Shavuos B'Tamez, Sora B'Teves, Tisha B'Av, and Tzom Gedalyo. Tzoyim HaRevi'ah, Tzoyim HaChamishi, Tzoyim HaShvi'ah v'Tzoyim HaAsiri, yiyu leBeis Yehuda leSosen uleSimcha uleMoyadim Tovim, u'emes v'Sholem Ahevu. So that is the basic source in Divrei HaNevi'im, 4 fast days, all coming to remember Chorban Beis Mikdusheinu v'Sefarteinu. Tanas Chof Tes Omed Aleph, B'Shvi'ah B'Av Nechnasu Oivim Lahechal V'Ochelu V'Kilkelu. 7th day of Av, 2 days, they drank, they drunked, they drinked, they were over Avera Znus. B'Tshi B'Av Lefnois Erev Etzitu Et Ha'ur, they set the Beis HaMikdash, the Heichel, to torch, to fire. V'yodolik v'hoilech kol hayom kulo. And the Beis HaMikdash was reduced to ashes, Asora B'Av. Rabbi Yochanan says, if I would be there, I would suggest that the day of mourning and fasting should be Asora B'Av, because that was the day in which the Beis HaMikdash actually was burnt and reduced to ashes. But the Chachamim decided, the Chachamim of that generation, B'Yamei HaNaviim, Atchalte de Poranuta Adifa. The day should be the day in which they set the Beis HaMikdash on fire. So that's the basic story. Yesh la'ayin, when Tisha B'Av falls on Shabbos, and it actually is Sora B'Av, Echad B'Shabbos is the day which we mourn and fast. Is that just like any other nidche, which is a technical nidche? Tisha B'Av is Tisha B'Av. But it is unreasonable that a year goes by and we're not misavel al Chorban Beis HaMikdash. Neither Shavuos B'Tamez or Tisha B'Av, and that is why the Chachamim said, if you can't fast on Shabbos, Echad B'Shabbos substitutes for Shabbos, or maybe Tisha B'Av is different. And when we can't fast Tisha B'Av, we fast on Asira B'Av Mishum Shaboy B'Yom Nisaf Rubi Shel Heichel. The 10th day in Av, into itself, in its own merit, should be a day of mourning and fasting. Rabbi Yochanan suggested that should be the Ikar day. So even though the Chachamim decided Tisha B'Av is the day, but if we can't fast on Tisha B'Av because it falls on Shabbos, then we fast on Asora B'Av, not instead of Tisha B'Av, but Asora B'Av into itself. That is the day. Nisraf Ruboy Shel Heichel. We find this svara in many achronim, so in chronological order, Turei Even, then the Chsam Soifa, Turei Even, Megillah Dafei. What do we have in Megillah Dafei? Purim Shechal B'Shabbos Magdim Enoisoi. Tisha B'Av Shechal B'Shabbos Ma'achrim. So the Gemara explains why Purim we make the Simcha earlier, Tisha B'Av we make the sadness, the mourning, later. Agdume Puranuta Lo Mikadmi. When we're dealing with a day of festival of joy, of Simchas HaMitzvah, then as early as possible. A day of tragedy and mourning as late as possible. Ask the Tirov, and why don't Chazal give a far more push at the explanation? If we can't fast on Tisha B'Av, we fast on Asira B'Av Mishum Shabo Nisrafru Bo Shalechal. The Torah Even answers, well, as the story is told, as we quoted before, B'Shviya B'Av Nechnasu Oivem Lechel V'Ochlu V'Kilkelu. Maybe that is also a reason to mourn and to fast. The Bezoyin of Beis Hamikdash Ochlu V'Kilkelu, and therefore Chazal needed to decide earlier or later. The reason later, not earlier, is Akduma Poranuta Lo Mikadmi. So we actually find in the Torah Even Shoirish HaSavora, even though it's not his maskona. Chuvas Ksav Soifa Kuf Aleph, Or Chaim quotes similar svora in the name of his great father, the Chassam Sofer. I won't share with you exactly what he says because it's a parperes bederech pilpul, no nafka min el halacha. But the etzem svora, the possibility that Tisha B'Av Nitche is different than other Nitche because, you know, let's put it this way. If it would be possible, we should have been fasting 2 days. Tisha B'Av Mishum Shabo Hitzitu et Ur, Asara B'Av Mishum Shabo Nisafru B'Shalechel. But it's impossible to fast 2 days. In Yerushalmi, there's a story about Avua de Reb Shmuel ben Reb Yitzchok fasted 2 days, Yom Kippur, Sveike de Yom, and he died, and he perished the second day. And the pois can bring the Wor Chasidim v'Anshe Maisa, the Wor Chasidim v'Anshe Maisa, that actually fasted 2 days, on Yom Kippur and on Tisha B'Av. But that was not what Chachamim wanted us to do, obviously, because it might endanger our lives and put Jewish lives in jeopardy. So if you can't fast Tisha B'Av, we fast Asara B'Av, because Bo Nisafru Bo Shalechem. Soon in the continuation of today's Shiur, we'll see some other Achronim that say the same. The Ksav Sofer suggests that this is actually a machlokes between the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah. Tov Kuf Nun Dalet Sif Yutes. Machlokes, Tisha B'Av Shechani is b'Shabbos. Is there a heter of Tashmish Amita on Shabbos? Shulchan Aruch says no Avelis in Shabbos, zero, not even Avelis Detzino. The Ramah is Machmir, and the Ramah says anything that is Betzina, Avelis Detzino is Noeg on Shabbos. What's the machlokes? Says the Ksav Sofer. If it's a technical nidche, it is only because you can't fast on Shabbos, and therefore we fast on Sunday. Then it's Mistavek Yeshitas Aramo. But you could keep Avelis Detzina b'Shabbos. Why not? Avelis Detzina Noyeg b'Shabbos. But if we say, if not Tisha B'Av, then it's Asara B'Av in its own merit, then it's only Asara and not Tisha, even regarding Avelis Detzina. That's the svor of the Ksav Sofer, and it makes a lot of sense. Hadvorim Mesyash v'Malalev. And I say, maybe the Machaber Shitosa and Simet Tov Kuf Nun Aleph Siv Daled. There we find another machlokes. Shavua Shechal Bo Tisha B'Av. When Tisha B'Av falls on Shabbos, and it is pushed off to Sunday, Echod b'Shabbos, is there a din the week before Shavua Shechal Bo Tisha B'Av? The Machaber brings two different opinions. Tov Kuf Nun Aleph Siv Daled. First opinion is there is no Shavua Shechal Bo Tisha B'Av, because Tisha B'Av is Sunday, not Shabbos. Second opinion, there is Shavua Shechal Bo Tisha B'Av. How do we explain this machlokes? L'chorah the same way. If we say Tisha B'Av is Tisha B'Av, and be'etzem there is no other, it's just a technicality. We can't fast and we can't mourn on Shabbos. There's a mitzvah of Voinik Shabbos, there's a mitzvah of Simcha on Shabbos. It's a Isser Avelis, but there is no Isser Avelis B'tzina. And Shabbos is still Tisha B'Av, then it's reasonable to assume that the week before is Shavua Shechal Tisha B'Av. But if Asara B'Av steps in instead of Tisha B'Av, Mishum Shabo Nisafru B'Shalechel, then Tisha B'Av this year is not relevant. It's not Tisha B'Av. This year it's Asara B'Av instead of Tisha B'Av, and therefore there is no din of Shavua Shechal Bo Tisha B'Av. And if this is correct, then the Machaber Shitosoi, because we have a well-known klal, a basic rule. When the Mechaber brings two different opinions, what is the Ikar Lahalocha? If the first opinion is Stam, second opinion Yesh Oimrim, Alocha Keshita Kamaisa. If both opinions are brought, Yesh Oimrim, Alocha Keshita Batraisa, the second opinion. So in our case, the Shulchan Aruch writes there is no Shavua Shechal B'Tisha B'Av, v'Yesh Oimrim that there is. So das Mechaber is there is no Shavua Shechal B'Tisha B'Av l'Shita Sefin Tov Kuf Nun Daled. Why is there no Isser Avelis B'Tzena? No Mitzvah Avelis B'Tzena? Because it's Asoro and not Tisha. When you can't fast on Tisha, Asoro B'Av steps in its own merit. And therefore there is no Din Shavua Shechal B'Tisha B'Av. But if this is correct, why doesn't the Mechaber and Tov Kuf Nun Daled bring both opinions like he does in Siman Tov Kuf Nun Aleph? This is a Machlokes in Rishonim. So why does the Mechaber just bring with simplicity, there is no mitzvah aveles detzino in Shabbos Shechal Bo Tisha B'Av mutar betash mishamito? Why doesn't he bring the dissenting opinion? So one would say, what's the difference? There is a huge difference, and I'll explain why. If we would assume that whenever the Mechaber brings two opinions, it's a suffix, and the reason he brings them both is because he didn't decide which is Ikar Lahalocha, then we would understand why he brings both opinions. But if we do have a fixed set of rules, even when he brings two opinions, when is the Alocha Keshita Rashoina, when is the Alocha Keshita Shnia, then we must understand why does he bring two opinions. Almost in every Sif in Shulchan Aruch, there is a Machlokes, and the B'Sheisa brings all the opinions. Sometimes two, sometimes three, sometimes four, and sometimes more. But the Shulchan Aruch decides which ones are Alocha L'Maisa, and that's it. So why in many cases does he bring two opinions if we have a rule, Im Alocha Keshita Rashoino Keshita Shnia? Yad Malachi explains, whenever the Shulchan Aruch brings two opinions, he means, even though Ikar Halacha, one of the two, but the other opinion also has room in Halacha. So if the opinion that is not accepted Alocha L'Maisa is a Chumrah, that means Hamachmir Tovoi Olav Barocha. If possible, we should be Machmir. Afar Pisha Ikar Adin L'Kula. And if the unaccepted opinion is a Kula, that means B'Shas Adchak Yesh Mokom L'Hokel. So therefore I ask once again, if these two halachas are two sides of the same coin, and both are based on the fundamental difference of understandings, the two different interpretations, what is Tisha B'Av Nidche? Then just like the Mechaber brings the other opinion, Lagabe Shavua Shechal Bo, Mechaber should also bring the other opinion, Lagabe Aveles Detzino. My second question is regarding the Ramah. The Ramah clearly disagrees in Tov Kuf Nun Daled with the psak of the Mechaber regarding Aveles Detzino. So why doesn't he disagree in Tov Kuf Nun Aleph regarding Shavua Shechal Bo Tisha B'Av? Ve'im Tim Tzeloimo, according to the Ramah, it's not a relevant question, because the Ramah does bring that Bnei Ashkenaz or Neag all the dinim of Avelis before Shavua Shechal Bo Tisha B'Av. Ashkenazim have the 9 days. Sfardim have Shavua Shechal Bo. According to the Ramah, all the chumras of Shavua Shechal Bo Tisha B'Av are 9 days from Rosh Chodesh Av, and therefore the question isn't relevant. No. That is almost correct, but not entirely correct. Because even according to the Ramah and Minhag Ashkenaz, there still is a big difference between Shavua Shechal Bo Tisha B'Av and the days preceding Shavua Shechal Bo Tisha B'Av, Meresh Chodesh till the week. And I just mentioned 4 different halachas. Tov Kuf Nun Aleph Sif Yud Daled. We learn in Shulchan Aruch that even big day Ketanim, you cannot do laundry Shavua Shechal Bo Tisha B'Av. And the Mishnah Berurah Sif Koten Pei Beis quotes the Chai Odom. This Isser applies only to Shavua Shechal Bo, not to all the 9 days. even according to Ashkenazim. Another Chayodim quoted by the Mishnah Brura, Tov Kuf Nun Aleph, Sif Kot Mem Gimel. So in Shulchan Aruch Sif Hey, a Jewish woman cannot clean the garments. She cannot do laundry for non-Jewish people. Once again, we're going to have Mishnah Brura, quoting Chayodim, that is only Shavua Shechalbo, not by the 9 days. Number 3, Tov Kuf Nun Aleph Sif Yud, we learn that a Baal Bris and the Sandik and the other participants in a Bris could eat meat and drink wine. Shavua Shechalbo Tisha B'Av. Same regarding a Siyum Masechta, it's a Siyum Mitzvah. But only a Minyan Mitzumtzam, only those family closest of friends, up to 10 people, not more. Once again, Mishnah Berurah Sif Kot Nayin Zayin, and this time he quotes the Nesivis and Derech HaChaim. That is only Shavua Shechalbo. Tisha Sayomim were Mekel. Anybody that participates in the Seder could partake of meat and wine. Number 4, Tov Kuf Nun Aleph Sif Hey. Misha Eino Ela Cholok Echad. Bialocha, Sif Gimel, not Sif Hey, Tov Kuf Nun Aleph Sif Gimel. Mishnah Berurah in Bialocha says only Shavua Shechalbo, not Tisha Sayomim. So we have various different halachas, even according to the Ramo. There is a difference. So why doesn't the Ramo voice his opinion against the Psak of the Mechaber regarding Shavua Shechalbo? This would prove that those two halachas are not necessarily two sides of the same coin, and they're not based on the fundamental interpretations of Tisha B'Av and Nidche. Now I want to prove clearly Lav Ha Baha Talia. The Maharil Minhogei Shavuos B'Tamas V'Tisha B'Av, and the same the Mordechai and Masechet Tanis, Tov Lamedei on one hand, Tov Reish Lametes on the other. These two Rishonim maintain Avelis Detzina Noheges B'Shabbos. The Chumrah of the Ramah regarding Shavua Shechalbo, they are Mekel. There is no Shavua Shechalbo Tisha B'Av. According to the first half of today's Shiur, this is a stira. This is a contradiction. And this proves these two halachas are not two sides of the same coin and cannot be. Many times I try to explain to my Talmidim in Koilelim, in yeshivas, the derech halimud, on one hand, this is so important. Every sugya, every halacha you learn, you need to clearly define. Definition is everything. Hahagdora hi tchilas hachochmo v'soifo. And if you have a clear essence and definition, that is the basis of halacha. However, in yeshivas the tendency is every sufek, every machlokes, to explain based on the fundamentals. Keilu the machlokes is an yesodes advorim, and in most cases that is a mistake. The sveikes and machlokes are very nuanced, and usually it's in dakas hu inyan, in nuances. And I take our sugya today, our shiur, as an example. So the Ksav Sefer says, once the machlokes regarding Avela Detzina, the most fundamental definition, what is Tisha B'Av Nidche? Is it a technicality of dichui, or is it something essential? Is it because Yom HaSiri B'Av Nisraf Rubai Shal Heichal? Makes a lot of sense, but I don't think it's correct. To me, there is no other way. There are no two ways. There's only one way. Tisha B'Av Nidche is a technicality, just like Shavuos B'Tamas or Tzom Gedaliyahu, for a very simple reason. We have no source of the concept of Dichui by Shavuos B'Tamas and Tzom Gedalia. We learn these two tzomis from Tisha B'Av. The only source is Tisha B'Av Shechal Yez B'Shabbos Nidche L'Yom Rishon. That's the Mishnah in Megillah Dafei. And it is from Tisha B'Av that we learn Shavuos B'Tamas and Tzom Gedalia. Im Timtze Loimar, that the rationale by Tisha B'Av is B'Shum Shebasor B'Av Nisraf Rubai Shal Heichal. How do we know the same rule applies to us also B'Tammuz and Tzom Gedalia? Especially when we realize the Gemara Megillah Hayom Beis, Bikish Rebbe Lakor Tisha B'Av, and the Gemara explains we're dealing with Tisha B'Av Shechalis B'Shabbos, and Rebbe's feeling was given Shenitcha Netcha. Who says we need to substitute? Tisha B'Av falls on Shabbos and we don't fast, and we don't mourn. That was Rebbe's Haberman. Chachomim rejected Rebbe's thought, Rebbe's suggestion. But we do find there is a tzad to say Kivin Shenitcha Netcha. There is a tzad to say can't fast on Tisha B'Av. We don't fast. It's not a miltzah de pshita that we fast an other day. Then an other day steps in as a day of Tzom and Avelis. So how could we learn Shavuos B'Tammuz and Tzom Gedalia from Tisha B'Av if the Yesod in Tisha B'Av is a totally different Yesod which doesn't apply to the other days? This proves beyond doubt to me. There is no two drachim. I am aware of Tshuvas Rashba, which is the most important source. Chelek Aleph Siman Tov Kuf Chav. The Rashba was asked Avelis that sin, is it Noeg on Tisha B'Av Shechali is B'Shabbos? The Rashba says no, because it's Nitchet to Sunday. If it's Nitchet, then there are no Dinei Avelis on Tisha B'Av. And especially, writes the Rashba, Basira B'Av Nislaf Ruba Yishal Heichal. So we find this svor in Rashba regarding the din of Avelis that sin of Tisha B'Av. But when we examine the Rashba thoroughly, he adds on the svora oni l'Rav Chedemilta. The basic argument and svora of the Rashba is it's a nidche. So all we have is a Sora B'Av. Tisha B'Av is no Avelis, no Tzom, nothing. So what is the machlokes in both these halachas? As I indicated a few minutes ago, nuance. So let me try to explain the way I understand the question of Avelis Tetzina. Avelis Tetzina Noeg Shabbos. And when a person is an Aval on a family member that passed away, Avelis the Yochid, Avelis is Noeg in Shabbos. But that is only because Shabbos is one of the 7 days. Shabbos is the count. Shivas Yom Avelis do not exclude Shabbos, and therefore there is Avelis in Shabbos, Avelis Tetzina. So the Machmirim say, why would Tisha B'Av Shechali B'Shabbos be different? The minimum Avelis that you could be Noeg on Shabbos, you're chayiv to be Noeg on Shabbos. After all, it's Tisha B'Av. The other opinion that's Meikel, and that is Shittas Shulchan Aruch, the Mechaber, no. It's totally unreasonable that 2 days are days of Avelis, days of mourning. Wasn't what the Nevi'im had in mind. Yes, there is a dilemma. Which of the 2 days should be Yom Eivel? Sora B'Av Mishum Shabo Nisafru B'Shalechel, which was Rabbi Yochanan's suggestion, or Halacha L'Maaseh. Rabbi Yochanan is rejected. It's Tisha B'Av. But it's only 1 day. Either Tisha B'Av or Sora B'Av. It's so reasonable that Avelis Teferes is only 1 day, Sunday. Tzom V'Tanis is only 1 day. And Avelis Tetzina is no 2 days. There are no 2 days, only one. Either Tisha B'Av or Sora B'Av. And therefore, if Tisha B'Av shows up Shabbos, there is no then Avelis. Lock, stock, and barrel. Al Kiruboy Ikrov. The entire din of Tisha B'Av, Kol El Choiseo Proteo V'Digdukeo, are a Sora B'Av Sunday and not Tisha B'Av. That is the way I understand this machlokes. In a similar vein, similar but not the same. What's the suffer regarding Shavuot Shechal Bo Tisha B'Av? Das HaMekelim, which is Ikar Das HaShulchan Aruch. If you mourn on Tisha B'Av, then you always also have some level of mourning Shavuot Shechal Bo. The Avelis builds up. But if you're not mourning, and Tisha B'Av is not a Yom Eivel because it's Shabbos, then Shavuot Shechal Bo isn't relevant. Shavua Mechalbo is not Chomer Tisha B'Av. The Asa Machmirim is Shavua Shechalbo has nothing to do with the question, are you noyeg min agavelis Tisha B'Av or not? Tisha B'Av is Tisha B'Av, and there is no other. Tisha B'Av is the Yom of Chorban Abayis. So even when Tisha B'Av is Chal and Shabbos, and therefore we're not noyeg agavelis, and we don't fast, doesn't change the very fact that this is the week of Chorban Habayis. Shavua Shechal B'Tisha B'Av, we're noyeg agavelis, because it's Shavua Shechal B'Tisha B'Av. It is the week preceding the day of Chorban Abayis, whether you fast on that day or not. So even when Tisha B'Av Chali is b'Shabbos, Shavua Shechal B'Tisha B'Av is not dependent on Avelis that Tisha B'Av before. Shavua Shechal B'Tisha B'Av is the week preceding the day Shabo Nisraf Ha'eichal V'Chorav Beis Mikdosheinu V'Sifrateinu. That would be my understanding. But I do want to go back 15 minutes and share with you another machshava, another thought. Maybe the two fundamental interpretations of Tisha B'Av Nitches and Machlokes Bavli and Yerushalmi. I started today's Shiur with a Brais and Talis Daf Chavtes, the story of Tisha B'Av. B'Shvi Shabbat Nechnasu Evem Leichel V'Yochlo V'Kilkalo. The same story we find in Yerushalmi, not in Tanis, but in Megillah Daf Hey Omid Beis. What context? As I mentioned before, Puri Magdimim, Tisha B'Av Ma'achram. And then the Yerushalmi tells the story of Tisha B'Av, and I wonder, why in Megillah, not in Tanis? Avelis is in Moed Katan. Tzoim is in Tanis. Megillah is a happy Masechta. What does that have to do with Tisha B'Av? It's just one mention of Tisha B'Av in Masechet Megillah. Purim Magdimim Tisha B'Av Ma'achran. So why do Chazal and Yerushalmi bring this Braisa and Megillah? If not, they want to convey a message. The reason Tisha B'Av Ma'achram is because Hoyu Doilek v'Hoylech Kol Hayoim Kuloi ve'Rubai Shalech Al Nisraf B'Yud B'Av. So maybe this fundamental question would be a Machlokes Bavli and Yerushalmi. Three great Gedolim from Poland, Galicia, and Lithuania deal with the very same question, which is a fascinating discussion. Kotten Shehigdel, Moitzoi Shabbos Shechal Bo Tisha B'Av. Child, a boy has his bar mitzvah, Moitzoi Shabbos. Is he chayav to fast on Sunday? A fundamental rule in Tashlimin is Misha Pota Be'ikar Azman, Pota Bin Tashlumin. Misha Chayev Be'ikar Azman, Yesh Lo Tashlumin. This is a Gemara, Sugi in Chagiga, Chiga B'Yom Rishon V'Nisbatayach. It's a fundamental rule in Karbonos, Tfilos. If you skipped one Tfilah, you have to Shlumin by the next Tfilah. Mesechet Psochim Tzadik Gimel Omid Aleph. Pesach Sheni, according to Reb Nosson, it's Tashlumin. And therefore, Kotten Shigdel Ben Shnei Psochim, Gershon is Gaya Ben Shnei Psochim, Potem Anasas Pesach Sheni. So what's the din of a child that becomes Bar Mitzvah Moitzoi? Tisha B'Av Shechali is B'Shabbos. Tshuvas Avnei Nezer Or Chaim Tov Chavav, Gdol Gedolei Poilen, Marsham Gimel Shin Samach Gimel, the Mesham was the giant of his generation, Gdol Gedolei Galicia, Poisek Ador. Number 3, Divrei Malki Al Chelekei Semakuf Lamed, one of the greatest Poiskim in Lithuania, very contemporary Rabbi Yitzchak Elchanan. Rabbi Yitzchak Elchanan Spector, the Be'er Yitzchak, and he was definitely on par, a Ben Giloi of the Divrei Malkiel. These three Gedolim are Ormefalpel. It depends on the two fundamental approaches. Biurim. If Tisha B'Av is Nitche just like any other Nitche, then Sunday is Tashlumin. So the boy would be Potem Melesanis. But if Sunday stands in its own merit, And if we don't fast on Tisha B'Av, we do it on Sunday, Shaboy Nisafru B'Shalechel, then the boy would be chayiv. So I have a problem, because according to my fundamental understanding that I just shared with you, my precious Talmidim, I don't think that is a mahalach at all, as I explained. I think it's Posha Tisha B'Av Nitcha is no different than Shavos B'Tamuz or Tzoyim Gedalia. But on the other hand, I think this is a mistake. Nitcha lechud, tashlumin lechud. And nitcha has nothing to do with tashlumin. The basic difference is tashlumin is always coincidental and personal. Nitcha is not coincidental and definitely not personal. Pesach Sheni is Misho Yotomo v'derech rechoiko. Each and every one. It's a din on the Yochid and totally coincidental. Ho Yotomo o v'derech rechoiko. Just transpired. It's coincidence. The same if a person couldn't bring a korban yom tov, he has 7 days. Person skipped the tefillah. Nitcha is not personal and it's not coincidental. Nitcha is lekol beis Yisrael, mektzei olam va'ad ketzeu. And it's not mere coincidence. When the Nevi'im were metak and dalat tzoymes, they were fully aware that by statistical understanding, every year or so, or year and a half, one of the tzaymis will fall on Shabbos. What will they do then? Nitcha. So a child that becomes b'mitzvah moitzi Shabbos, chayev lehes anois em kol beis Yisrael meketzei oilem v'ad ketzei yom. And nitcha and tashlumin are two different concepts. V'loi korev zel ze kol halayla v'gam lo kol hayom. Not only kol halayla. And that is my fundamental understanding in this sugya. So I think this is a fascinating discussion. Hapoich bo v'hapoich bo. Next week, Be'ezus Hashem, we will deal with Talmud Torah and Tisha B'Av Shechal Yes B'Shabbos. Is there more room to be makel for people that aren't feeling well, for cholim? So the more detailed halacha l'maisa will be next week. But I want to go back to the posuk I quoted at the very beginning of today's shiur. Divrei Hanovi, Tzoyim Haravi v'Tzoyim Hachamishi, Tzoyim Hashvi v'Tzoyim Hasiri. Yehu lebeis Yehuda l'sosen u'lesimcha l'moyedim toivim v'hu emes v'sholem ha'evu. What is the kesher, the connection between the Reisha and the Sefer? We understand the Reisha. It's a tefillah, hope, prophecy, promise. The days will be transformed to days of joy and glory. When will that be? So the Navi says, I can't tell you when, but I'll tell you how. Everybody knows Amar Mechazal. Kol dor shalai nivna beis mikdash b'yamav. If we would be sitting right now in the same room, I would challenge you. Kol dor shalai nivna beis mikdash b'yamav ke'ilu pume de insha margalo b'fumehen derabona v'talmideyom. People will say ke'ilu chorav b'yamav. That's a mistake. That is a mama which is nowhere in Chazal. The real formulation is in Yerushalmi, Megillah Dafei. Not Megillah, rather Yom Dafei. Kol dor shel nivna beis hamikdash b'yom av malan olav ke'ilu hu hechrivo. Far harsher language. Because when you say kilachora b'yom av, it transpired. It happened. Very sad that it happened. But it just happened. It didn't just happen. Someone bears responsibility. And whenever I quote this Yerushalmi, I give a mushal. Present day mushal. Mother leaves the house for 5 minutes and she tells her kinderlach, I'm just going down to the local makona to buy a carton of milk. Behave. I don't want to find a balagan when I get back. 5 minutes later, she steps into the house. The beautiful big living room window is 1,000 pieces, glass all over the house. The vase, flower pot, on the table, broken to bits, and the entire room is swimming in water. The door of the fridge is open and the cheesecake is upside down on the table. And the mother angrily asks, I told you to behave. Who did it? And all the kids, koil echad, ki ish echad belev echad, nobody did it. It happened by itself. And mother says it didn't happen. Flower pots don't jump off tables. Cheesecakes don't open the door and fly out of the fridge. And windows don't decide on their own to break. Someone did it, and I want to know who. So when we say Ke'ilu Charav B'Yom, it happened. Kodesh Baruch Hu says, didn't just happen. Someone did it. And I know who. Kol Dor Shel Nivra Beis Hamikdash B'Yom Ke'ilu Hu Hechrivo. And why is that? It's so simple and so profound. By human beings, it's far easier to watch over and maintain a building than rebuild it after it imploded and fell apart. But by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's all the same, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows no difficulty. Rashi and Tosfos, 3 sources in Shas, Rosh Hashanah, Sanhedrin, Sukkah Mem Aleph. Rashi and Tosfos maintain, so the moment we will deserve a Beis Hamikdash and we will be fitting for a Beis Hamikdash, we will have one. If we don't have one, it's only because we don't deserve one, because we're not fitting to have a Beis Hamikdash, and therefore, Ke'ilu Hu Hechrivo. So if we are the ones that bear responsibility for the Chorban, we also bear responsibility for the Binyan. How do we build a Beis Hamikdash? I think it goes without saying. When we will analyze and understand what caused the Chorban, you need to fix what you broke, rectify the Avedas that brought about Chorban Beis Hamikdash. That is the way we rebuild the Beis Hamikdash. So what brought about the Chorban? Twice in Shas, above Metzia and the Dom Pei Aleph, Al Mu'av de Ha'oretz, Dov Ezad Nishalach HaChomim Lenaviyim Velo Pirshu, Ad She'omer HaKodesh Baruch Hu, Al Ozva Misterosi. Shalei Baruch Hu B'Torah Tchilu, and the Ran, on the spot in the Durham explains, it's not about Berachas HaTorah. It's about the reason they didn't say Berachas HaTorah. Lo Yehoisu HaTorah Chashuva Beineim Velo Asku Ba Lishma. It was a lack of ahavas Torah, of appreciation for Torah. What caused the destruction of Bayis Sheni? Yomid of Tetten Bavli, Yomid of Hebi Ushalmi. What caused Churban Bayis Sheni? Sin as chinam. So the Navi says, you want to know when these days of mourning will be transformed to days of joy, of glory? I could tell you how. It's up to you to define when. Bo emes vasholem ahevu. Ein emes elo Torah. Torasenu agdoishi Torahs emes. When you will learn to love and appreciate Torah. V'hasholem ahevu. And instead of sinas chinam, which brought about Chorban, you should have a havas chinam, which will rebuild the Beis Hamikdash. It is then that we will all be zoicha b'korav b'yameinu. שצוים הרביעי וצוים החמישי, צוים השביעי וצוים העשירי יהיו לבייס יהודו, לסוסן ולשמחו ולמוידים טובים.